Tommy Shepherd.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I fear that sometimes in politics people oppose propositions for the wrong reasons, and I don't regard myself as being immune from this tendency, by the way, but quite often people are in their political bunkers and they have predetermined attitudes as to what a proposition means, and before someone even expresses a single word in support of a proposition, their mind is made up on the basis of who is actually making the argument. And I fear that this is one of these occasions where, no matter how convincing the arguments we put on this side of the bench, the government is not going to listen to them and they are going to fall on deaf ears. And I am saddened by that, because I think that is not a good way to approach such a serious subject. Now, let me be, and I think there are probably people opposite, I don't know if I would include the Minister in these ranks, who simply will reject any proposition on visa controls or anything else that comes to the Scottish National Party, because they would regard giving in or moving towards that position as being somehow the thin end of the wedge of Scottish independence, and therefore no quarter must be given. Let me be clear, of course, that on this, and just for the sake of clarity, these benches here are comprised of people who very much want Scotland to become an independent country which will have full and absolute control over all matters to do with nationality and the movement of people into and out of the country. I very much look forward to the day, and I hope it will not be too long ahead, where we can actually establish an immigration system in Scotland that gives people Scottish citizenship with a very generous attitude and encourages people to come and make their homes in our country from all corners of the globe. A country made up of first-class citizens, rather than different attitudes being to different people depending on where they come from. But that's not where we are. That is not where we are, and it's not where we are in this debate, and it's not what is being proposed today. What is being proposed is a simple policy to have a work visa in one part of the United Kingdom because of very clear, overwhelming arguments in favour of it. And we have a situation, I could almost suggest, Mr Deputy Speaker, that a unionist-minded politician could be supporting many of the propositions that are contained within this, because the purpose behind this is to try and make up, to deal with the consequences of Scotland being part of a centralised single state where economic planning, strategic economic planning in particular, is very much done from the centre, and where Scotland, the Scottish economy, risks becoming a peripheral regional economy in a much larger entity. We all know the economic pressures that creates. I myself moved to this city in the 1980s for work. So did many other people I know. It's still happening today. This gravitation that comes and overheats the southeast of England, which is precisely why, Mr Deputy Speaker, a one-size-fits-all policy is not the answer to anything. Now, for the last 20 years or so, the Scottish population has been growing slightly, but only as a result of immigration to the country. Had it not been for that, the population would actually have been in decline. And for that period, up until the end of this year, we have been blessed in many ways by having access to the free movement of people across this continent, which has allowed many people from other European countries to come and make their home and live and work in Scotland. But now that is at threat of disappearance, it is all the more important that we address what sort of immigration system we have in the United Kingdom, and whether Scotland, as part of that, is going to have its needs satisfied. And I would say that with the current proposals that are on offer, perhaps the honourable gentleman can enlighten me, but with what I know of the current proposals on offer, that is most definitely not the case. But I give way.
In force centralising Scotland and England and the rest of the Union in single economic policy is, of course, sharing currency. So does the honourable gentleman now think that Scotland should leave the pound in order to have an independent policy? Because otherwise they would obviously be very dependent.
I'm not sure what the relevance of that question to the current debate, but let me answer him that we will not be too many years hence, I tell the honourable gentleman, until Scotland will be a strong and prosperous economy with its own currency, its own central bank, and punching well above its weight compared to what it is today. There are various arguments that have been put already from the benches against this proposal, which really don't hold water, because they're not, in essence, arguments against what's being proposed. Well, let's see if there's another one before I start going through them.
Grateful to the honourable gentleman for giving way, and clearly the buoyancy of the economy and how it works would be either an attractor to come to Scotland or not, if one wanted to be a migrant. But in that situation of independence, as I understand it, SNP policy is to rejoin the European Union, then surely and from the secondary position that is confirmed, then surely the currency of Scotland would be the euro.
Well, no, it wouldn't. No, it wouldn't. Nor is there any requirement for it to be so. Much as this is very much the season of dead cats, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I'm not going to respond to that one being thrown on the table. I'm going to focus on the arguments about having a Scottish visa. There are some arguments that have been put against this that I want to deal with. The first is this suggestion that somehow this is some sort of backdoor into the United Kingdom, and we're going to open up a portal through which lots of migrants are suddenly going to come to the shores of Britain, and then they are going to find their way to the honourable gentleman or the honourable lady's constituencies opposite and cause unknown terror for their constituents. Now, much as they might want to blow those dog whistles and whip up fears about immigration, that is not what is being proposed here. We are proposing a simple measure which could be enforced through as simple a mechanism as your national insurance number, where somebody has the right to seek employment and be employed and pay tax in Scotland, but not in any other part of the United Kingdom. What would happen if they decided they were going to get on a train and come and take a job in London? They would give their details over, and their employer would be able to say, "I'm sorry, we can't actually make this offer of a job because you don't have the requirements to work in this part of the United Kingdom. You only are validated for working in Scotland." Now, it might be said, oh well, but what would happen anyway if people just ignore that and somehow, unofficially or illegally, effectively, would go and seek work? Well, that could happen, but that could happen now. Yeah. This argument makes no difference to that actually happening. In fact, this is an argument for controlling the work permit situation within the United Kingdom to a much better extent than it is being done at the moment. And the other point that's being suggested here, and we've had this several times, is that somehow the proposals that we are making in these benches are an alternative to this grand, yet-to-be-unveiled new immigration system that the United Kingdom is going to have. It's been said, I think, 4 or 5 times already in the debate, but members are deaf to these arguments. We are not saying this is a delete all and insert policy. We are saying that this is something that could be brought in addition to the United Kingdom procedures in order to provide for very particular circumstances that operate in Scotland. The other argument that's been thrown against this is, oh, well, why, what's so exceptional about Scotland? Why Scotland? There's other parts of the United Kingdom that you could make this argument to. There are, but probably not a whole country, and probably not a whole country where there already is a semi-autonomous devolved system of government and administration where it would be simple to actually bring these proposals in. And I say to members opposite, embrace this idea, because what if it worked? What if it actually worked? Then it would be an argument for having provincial government in England and for having differentiated systems that take into account that this is a large country with a very, very diverse economic needs in different parts of it. And if the members opposite and the government are serious about these platitudes they make about the north and investment and growth in the north of England, then this might be one of the vehicles that they could choose to actually deliver that. But, excuse me, Mr. Deputy. The other thing is that this debate takes place in a context. I said at the beginning that we were not advocating Scottish independence. This is a very mild-mannered proposal, really, to try and cater for particular economic circumstances in Scotland. An additional power to a Scottish government which already has significant powers in many other related aspects of social policy. But understand the context in which we are having this debate. I know that you have the numbers, that they have the numbers, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to defeat this proposal in the lobby tonight. Everybody watching this debate knows that this government has got more votes throughout the United Kingdom than the Scottish National Party has. But understand this well. Whilst the Conservative Party has a mandate in most of the United Kingdom and in England in particular, it has no mandate whatsoever in Scotland. It was roundly defeated on the 12th of December at the general election in Scotland, when people chose to send 80% of their representatives from this party, the Scottish National Party, to this place. And people are watching very carefully at debates such as this, because there is a clear desire and aspiration now in Scotland for people to be able to choose their own future, to be able to make a judgment as to whether the course that the United Kingdom has set by leaving the European Union and setting itself up in a fairly insular and isolated situation, whether that is the path that we wish to follow. And many people do not, and many people in particular, and now, Mr Deputy Speaker, a clear majority of people would express the wish that we should choose a different path, an independent path where we control our own destiny, make our own decisions, make our own mistakes, and learn from them, because the people who live in that country, and only the people who live in that country, have got the right to determine how they are governed going forward. That is the sentiment which is growing now in Scotland. And much as the government may want to put its head in the sand and ignore that that's happening, I caution them to engage with public opinion in Scotland, because every time they refuse to do so, they simply fuel the appetite for change. They fuel the number of people who say, we don't want to put up with this anymore, we now look with fresh eyes at the alternatives on offer. And in many ways, the government so far since the election has been doing this party's job for it. The opinion polls are rising. More and more people in Scotland are demanding and getting behind the cause of independence, and we haven't even started the campaign. This is all the work of the United Kingdom government. And if you throw out sensible proposals like this one, which would be to the benefit of the Scottish economy, the benefit of the people in Scotland, but which might also be something very sensible to do while Scotland remains in the United Kingdom. If you throw this out and ignore the arguments that we are making, then you fuel that appetite and that desire even more.